Sean Appleton.
Thank you, sir. Our master teacher, Robert B. Holman Jr. I thank all of you, and most importantly, I thank the Most High for allowing me to be able to stand before you yet another Shabbat and to be able to share with you the things that I have gleaned from Scripture. The Most High has continued to give us His blessing. He's continued to keep us. And most importantly, He has given us the ability to understand His Word, to understand the things that He would have us to be able to matriculate into a lifestyle. And so with that, I say Shabbat Shalom to all of you who are here. I'm going to stop with all this somberness. We're going to kick this up a notch. Okay? All right, let's make sure that was still alive up here. It's like you started all slow, brother. Come on. That's like when you're sitting at the gate and you're in the airplane and you feel the pilot start to put his foot on that gas. He start to put the thrusters on those engines. Let's go. Let's get it. If you have found your way here today, but by way of the stream, and I know a lot of you have joined us by the way of the stream, hopefully today, and I know you will today, the Most High is going to give you something that you can be able to use. One of the things that I've understood, and it's understanding the people that have shown up here, is that the Most High is giving you something already, which kind of drove you here. Right? And what you're looking for may be perhaps me to confirm your doubt. You have doubt in what you've heard, possibly in the Christian church, as being a Muslim, as being something else other than what the Most High has you to be. And it's pricked your mind in a sense where I'm here, and I wound up here because I'm hearing something that's confirming the doubt I already have. And I'm looking for somebody to either confirm or dispute what I have. Okay? I also want to admonish you by letting you understand, for those individuals that have this understanding that the Most High is actually pulling on my heartstrings. That's what we used to say in the old church, pulling on your heartstrings. Is that and pricked you in a way where your conscience is convicted. I want to give you this. The Most High has called you out of what you were in, and I'm looking at you because this is a conversation that we're finishing. He's called you out because He recognizes that what are we supposed to do as Hebrew Israel? We are supposed to be leaders to the nations. We're supposed to be leaders, period, right? Individuals are supposed to look to us, have an understanding, and be able to follow the Most High. The Most High is looking for leaders. He's not looking for followers, right? One of the reasons that you possibly wound up here is because you don't have this follower spirit inside you that says that I'm just going to go along with the crowd just because like somebody said so. I'm going to believe it. So I'm going to start out today with 2 questions. They're going to be pop quiz questions, okay? I want you to think about them. I'm not going to do you like your teacher and ask you a question and then have you answer it on the spot. I'm not giving him a dig. I'm not. I'm going to ask you a question, but I want you to think about it because it's going to come back up. Okay? First question. 2 unrelated questions. Okay? Think about them as we're going through this. Then answer it within yourself. And when we get to this point, hopefully you have an answer. I want you to think. Matter of fact, those of you that have been in the Christian church, that were raised in the Christian church, that's been spent more than 2 years in the Christian church, have been indoctrinated in the Christian church. Raise your hand. All right. That's almost everybody that's in the room. Way of the stream, since you can't see, that's almost everybody in this room. Now, I want to ask you a question. When someone told you that Jesus or Yeshua was God, how did you know that? How did you know that? Don't answer that right now. How did you know emphatically when someone told you or you were introduced to the idea that Jesus was God? How did you know that? Why did you believe it? Okay? Think about that for a second. Why did you? Now, I want you to think about, because we're going to get to this issue, because later on, this is going to come up. Because if I was to tell you that that gentleman right there with the locks, I don't call them dreads, because that's something different. The locks in the back with the glasses that's looking at me right now, if I told you that he was the Messiah and he was Jesus the Christ, the second coming, what would make you believe that? Think about it for a second. Second question, pop quiz question that's going to come up. In the book of Bamidbar, which is the book of Numbers, we start out with what? This idea in the first 5 chapters of the census. Why does the Most High instruct Moshe to write down all these names of these individuals? What is the purpose for all that? Other than when you're reading it and you're just like, oh my God, I'm so bored and reading all these names I can't pronounce. All these people that are in here. Why? The Most High doesn't do stuff just arbitrarily. There's a reason why those names are named in there. That's pop quick question. We're going to come back to that. We're going to answer that today, okay? Now, as you can probably see up here on the board, I have, what is that? 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 5 chapters I'm going to accomplish and trying to cover today. Plus, we're going to go over a 6th one that's not up there. But the 6th one is over in the New Testament. Okay? Chapter number 15. Now, the reason I'm going to be able to go through these pretty quick is because they all centralize around one idea. The idea in Yahushua 15 through 19 is this. We had prior to this in 11 through 14, we went through what? How Yahushua went through and he conquered all of these kingdoms, right? And we defined where the land was, right? We did that in 11 through 14. In 15 through 19, now that we've defined where the land is, now we need to divide up the land amongst the children of Israel. Moshe gives instruction on dividing this land up. They're to do it by lot. In these chapters here, these 5 chapters, the children of Israel get their land divided up. And that is why we're able to go through these chapters fairly quickly, because each one of these chapters deals with technically a different tribe. And then in 18 and 19, we combine actually 7 of them together, okay? So as far as content is concerned today, what you're going to get out of this, more importantly, is in these particular chapters in Yehoshua, we see the land getting divided up amongst the children of Israel. We've got this beautiful picture of the successor, Yehoshua, coming in, taking over for Moshe. He's crossed the Jordan. He's done the circumcision. They've done the Pesach. They've conquered Jericho. They've conquered these other kingdoms. They've gone up against multiple kingdoms. They've seen signs and wonders. They've got this miracle where the sun has stopped in the sky. The moon has stopped where it was. They've gone through, and now we're at the point where we're going to divide up the land. Okay? Let's get into it. 15. Yehuda's territory is assigned in chapter number 15. Caleb also gives his son-in-law and daughter additional land in chapter number 15. Chapter number 16. The borders of the tribes of Joseph are defined. Joseph is made up of 2 half-tribes. Who are they? Manasseh and Ephraim. Ken, Tov Meod. Do you know what Ken Tov Meod means? No, yeah. Ken means yes. Tov Meod means very good. It's in Hebrew. Ken Tov Mayod. Yes, very good. All right. Chapter number 17. Blah, 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 blah. The borders of Manasseh are defined. The daughters of Zelophehad. Does everybody remember who Zelophehad is? Back in chapter number 27, I believe it's in Bad Midbar. Zelophehad's daughters come to Moshe and they actually ask him a question, but they get their inheritance in this particular chapter. Zelophehad is a part of the tribe of Manasseh. In the tribe of Yosef in the tribe of Yosef, they get additional land. Not only do they get their parcel, but they get an additional set. Okay? That's in chapter number 17. Why am I going backwards? It's not good. It's not good. 18. The tribe of Robert Benjamin Holman. No, the tribe of Benjamin has its borders defined. That's what happens in chapter number 18. And then we finish up chapter 19, the tribes of Shimon, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali. Dan are assigned their inheritance in the land, and Yahushua receives his own city of Sacramento. No, he receives his own city. All right? Chapter 19. Let's get into this. Chapter number 15. Let's go over it. Really, and if you can follow along with me up there, Sister Harless, we're going to start at chapter 15, verse 1. And technically, verse 2 starts with the definition of Yehuda's territory. It tells us where the southern border is. Now, again, I'm not going to go through these in detail because their names of these places have changed, and trying to understand the geographical location in specificity, I cannot. That is why I'm of the opinion that when we get our leader, when we matriculate back into the land, all this stuff will be defined for us. Okay? So I'm not going to worry too much about saying, okay, well, the point of this border is here, and this southern border is over here, and the northern border is up here, and then we're not going to do that. Okay? I'm just going to let you know that verse 2 defines the southern border. Verse 5 defines the eastern border. As you come out of verse 5, you are into the northern border right before you get to verse 6. Verse 12 gives you the western border of the Yehudims, or the tribe of Yehuda. We drop down into verse 13, where we enter into this issue with Caleb. And I'm going to actually read this for you because we're going to stick a pin in this. And when I finish up, we wound up in the Old Testament. We're going to come back to this when the Old Testament. Woo! Somebody needs to slap my hand. I saw all of y'all just look at me like, Old Testament? You using that language? No. In the New Testament, when I wind up at the end, we are going to come back to this issue. And it's not the Old Testament, it's the Tanakh. Okay? All right. Verse 13. Let's read it. It says, to Caleb, the son of Yefuneh, he gave a portion with the descendants of Yehuda as Yahweh had ordered Yehoshua, namely Kiryat Arba. Now, what we're defining here is you got to understand that who are we talking about? We're talking about Caleb. Caleb is a part of the tribe of Yehuda, all right? And he's getting his particular parcel as he is the leader of that tribe. And it says that land was actually called, the portion of land that they actually acquired was called the Hebron. 14, Caleb expelled 3 descendants from there, which is Anak, Shishai, Akaman, and Talamai, the children of Anak. It goes on to say in 15, it says, from there he went to fight the inhabitants of Devir. Now, I believe Devir was one of these kingdoms that Yahushua had gone through and conquered already, but the name of that place was called Kiryat Sefer. Caleb said, to whomever overpowers Kiryat Sefer and captures it, I will give my daughter Ashsa to to his wife, as his wife. Thank you. It says, Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother. Who is that? So we're talking about Caleb has a brother, and his brother had a son. That particular son captured it, and he gave Caleb's daughter to this particular individual. All right? As a wife. Now, after becoming his wife, she persuaded him to ask her father to give them a field. When she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Give me a blessing. Since you gave me land in the Negev, also give me sources of water." So Caleb gave her the upper spring and the lower spring. I looked at this particular passage and I said, is there a Torah mitzvot that's in here that we can pull out? Because I'm trying to understand, because if I'm thinking back in the recesses of my mind, what Torah mitzvot actually talk about betrothing a young woman, marrying her, and what is all of the precepts and procedures upon which that is supposed to happen. Now, that's what I thought when I read this particular passage. Now, I didn't necessarily, when I said, okay, well, we know about the issue of the dowry, okay? But is there any Torah mitzvot that says that the father is supposed to give the daughter something after they're married? And I couldn't find anything. So what this ends up turning out being for me is that the wife went to the husband and said, listen, persuade my father to give us this extra set of land. So he gave this to them as a gift. But in doing my research, I brought up a buzzword, which is what? The dowry. And that's what I found in here. So if you actually go, matter of fact, as a point of reference, in the book of Judges, chapter 1, verses 11 through 15, it's almost identical to what I just read here. It's going to get repeated when we get over to the book of Judges, which is the series I'm going to do right after I get done doing Yehoshua. But there is a mitzvot that says, now, if we are let me tell you what, if we're living Hebraically, and my sons find a wife, find one, okay? And they propose, she accepts the invitation to be the wife. By this mitzvot, my sons are supposed to go to the father and pay money as a dowry price for his bride. That is what's supposed to happen. Okay? Ultimately, women, you don't get the opportunity to, and I know you're not going to like this when I say this. So, because you live in 2022 and we have a different culture and a way of living, but I'm talking about Hebraically. You don't like it? Go look it up for yourself. I'm going to read it to you. All right? So I'm not fazed by your looks going through me. Because I'm just going to read text. All right? You don't get the opportunity you do get the opportunity to accept it, but the final decision on whether or not you marry this man is not up to you. It's up to your father to say, yes, I approve of this marriage. I approve of it. Now you can go marry her. And by the way, here is the price that is required for my daughter. Don't believe me? Let's read it. Shemot, chapter number 22, verses 16 through 17 says, if a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price for her to be his wife. But if her father refuses to give her to him, he must pay a sum equivalent to the bride price for a virgin. That doesn't mean that he gets to marry her. He still has to pay. Okay? All right? There is a whole series that I will probably do on marriages and how we're supposed to do this Hebraically and how it's supposed to be carried out, the family is very much involved in the decision making. There is no such thing as two people getting on a donkey and eloping somewhere and you being in the confines of text. I'm already giving you a hint where I'm getting ready to go with this later on. You can't elope. Okay? It's not text. All right? Yeah. 20, verse 20. Same chapter, not in verse Shemot, but we're going to go back to 15, chapter 15, verse 20. It starts out by giving us the inheritance for the tribes of the descendants of Yehuda by clan. It's from 21 all the way down to verse 63. It gives the cities and the names of those individuals that are assigned to it. In verse 63, we change and it says this. It says, as for the Uvisi who lived in Yerushalayim, the descendants of Yehuda could not drive them out. So the Uvisi lived with the descendants of Yehuda in Yerushalayim to this day. Why is that an area of, should say contention, but you should have your ears go up with that? Because right now we just broke another Torah mitzvot. Okay? Now, what Torah mitzvot did we break? All right? We broke one that was in Bad Midbar, chapter 33, verses 50 through 53. All right? The children of Israel are entering this land. They were told to take it. We have the Yehudian borders figured out. They get into the land, and we have this particular verse here that says in 63 that the descendants of Yehuda could not drive them out. All right. Back in Bad Midbar, chapter 33, verses 50 through 53, it says, Yahweh, matter of fact, I am not following my own notes that are up here. Woo! Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the plains of Moab by the Jordan, across from Jericho. He said, to tell the people of Israel, are you Israel? Yes, you are. What did he tell them? He says, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you are to expel some. No, it says some. No, it says some. Because apparently they didn't think it was all. They thought it was some. But the text says that tell the people of Israel, when you cross the Jordan into the land of the Canaan, you are to expel all of the people living in the land in front of you. Destroy their stone figures, destroy all their land, all their metal statues, and demolish their high places. Drive out the inhabitants of the land and live in it. For I have given the land to who? You. Not them, you to possess. Okay? So we already got a problem already. We're in the land. We were told to expel them, and that didn't happen. Starting with that first tribe right out the gate as we defined where they are. Okay? That's chapter number 15. Chapter number 16 is going to even go even quicker. Because chapter number 16, we define the territory and the tribe of Yosef. Now, matter of fact, let me go back. I missed one key point. If we could go back to 15, let's jump back into verse number 47. And I want to bring this up because it says, Ashad with its towns and villages, Oz with its towns and villages. And it says, if you were paying attention to what I was saying last time, when I talked, I had said that the borders of the land are from the Vadi, that's all the way that was told to our patriarch Abraham, from the Vadi of Mitzrayim to the Euphrates River. And here again, we have the Vadi of Egypt showing up again in verse number 47. All right? I'm probably scooting fast, aren't I? For you back there. But it says, to the Vadi of Egypt with the great sea at its border. So the Most High continues to define where this land is. We're not in opposition to where the Most High has put the land. We just need to be able to acquiesce to the idea that the Most High has defined it for us, and He gives us in clear instruction on where it is to be placed. Now, chapter number 16. Chapter number 16 is the territory of Yosef. Now, you've got two pieces where in verses 1 through 4, he defines the whole entire territory of Yosef, which is going to be Manasseh and Ephraim, because they're two half tribes as a part of that. Verses 5 all the way down to the end of the chapter define the territory of Ephraim. Okay? And I'm going to draw your attention to the last verse in this chapter, because it says it again. It says, they did not drive out, verse 10, the Canaanite living in Gezer. And the Canaanite lived together with Ephraim to this day, having become slaves to do their heavy work. Where was that being established earlier on? There was a group of people that starts with a G. They're called the Gibeonites. Thank you. The Gibeonites, because they misrepresented who they were, they tricked Yahushua, and Yahushua made an oath to them so they would be able to actually live amongst the children of Israel. Okay? So we kind of got this precedent that's been said already, but with these two tribes, the tribes of Joseph and the tribes of Yehuda, they did not kick these folks out. They were still in the land. Violation of a Torah mitzvah. All right? Most High has given us instruction and we don't follow, and then we wonder why things start falling apart at the end of the day. Chapter 17, we see the tribe of Manasseh's territories get defined between verses 1 and 3. And then again, anytime that the Most High interjects something into text, there's a reason for it, okay? Verses 3 all the way through verses 6 deal with this individual called Zelophehad. All right? Zelophehad is a direct descendant from Manasseh. All right? Does anybody remember Zelophehad's issue? And I just gave it to you earlier. Zelophehad had daughters. All right? And we're talking about inheritance in the land. They were handed down to the men. So we have a problem that happened in the desert. They came to Moshe and they said what? Back in Bad Midbar chapter number 27. They said, our father, Zelophehad, died in the wilderness, and not because of Korach. Everybody know who Korach is. We lived through a Korach situation in this house. Anyway, I'm going to move on. So you should be all too familiar with who Korach is. Korach, he didn't die because of Korach. He died in the wilderness. He didn't have a son. He just had daughters. So what are we supposed to do when we get into the land and all the land is being distributed and it comes time for us in our household, we don't get anything? What happens? The Most High and Moshe, Moshe goes to the Most High and asks the question, what should we do? What am I to do? And he simply tells him this. He says, listen, they can have an inheritance, but they need to marry inside the tribe of Manasseh. Okay? They marry someone inside the tribe of Manasseh. That way, again, because think about it. If I go ahead and I'm a daughter of, which I'm, I was going to say, which I'm not a woman. You can clearly see that. But pejoratively speaking, the daughters, if you're a daughter and you don't have any brothers, or your father didn't have a son, and you marry somebody from the tribe of, let's just pick one, of Naphtali, then Naphtali acquires that part of that land that you were assigned to, all right? And then it goes on to say it gets ratified in the year of Jubilees, okay? Jubilees, the year of Jubilees happens every 7 years. That's a Jubilee year. That's when it gets ratified and during that particular time. So if we have a bunch of women that are marrying outside of the tribes, and you can see how all the work that we're going through to partition this land goes right out the window, because we're going to have people having different portions of other people's lands. So he says, marry inside the tribe of Manasseh, upon which you are from, and that way the land stays within that. In this particular couple of verses, 3 all the way through 6, this is the recounting of it. They're going to Moshe, or they're going to Yahushua, and they're saying, remember what Moshe had said to you and to basically that came from the Most High? We want our land now. And so they're capitalizing on their land. All right? Verse 7. And this is, again, I'm bringing this up because this happened back in Bamidbar chapter 27, and we're seeing the culmination of all this, all right? Verse 7, all the way through, what do we want to stop at? Verse 7 really all the way down through 13, and there's a spot that I want to stop at verse 11, where it says, Asher, Yissachar, and Manasseh had Bet-Shan in its villages. So even though I just had mentioned, if we have all these daughters marrying these other individuals from other tribes, what we do see is that within the confines and territories of other tribes, there are some cities that other tribes held on to. Okay? And that's defined for us in verse 11. But what happens again? Verse 12. It says, but the descendants, oh, here we got a third one that didn't do it. The descendants of Manasseh could not drive out the inhabitants of those cities. So the Canaanite wanted to stay in the land. After the people of Israel had become strong, they made the Canaanite do the heavy labor, but didn't completely drive them out. We're falling into the same situation. We're setting ourselves up for failure because we simply did not listen to what the Most High asked us to do, which was what? Drive them out. Okay? Now, I'm going to read all of the rest of this chapter to you, which is 14 all the way down to 18, which is only 4 verses. All right? But you got to understand how this chapter is set up because we're supposed to be defining the tribes of Manasseh's territory. We have this issue of Zelophehad. Why is he in there? And the daughters? Because they are descendants in the tribe of Manasseh. That's why they're there. That's why they're interjected. Then we have the delineation of Manasseh's borders. Then what we go into is this last piece, which is the tribe of Joseph gets additional land. So everybody's supposed to get, the lot is drawn. They get a portion of land. Why does Joseph get an additional piece of land? Let's read it. It says, then the descendants of Joseph spoke to Yahushua and said, why have you given me only one lot and only one portion to inherit? Now, in study, answer the question. Answer it. When you're reading text, and I'm going to tell you, this is a little bit of insight on how I actually study. Because when that question is asked, and if I'm looking like I'm confused as to why that is, then I need to do my research. Okay? We're going to answer that question. It says, after all, I'm a great people, since Yahweh has blessed me so. Yahushua answered and said, if you are a great people, go up to the forest and clear the land for yourself there in a territory of the Perizzim, and go up to the forest and clear the land for yourself there in the territory of the Perizzim and the Rephaim. Since the hills of Ephraim do not give you enough space. The descendants of Joseph replied, the hills won't be enough for us, and the Canaanite living in the valleys have iron chariots. But those in Bet-Shan and its villages, and those in Israel in the Israel valley. Then Yahushua said to the house of Joseph, to both Ephraim and Manasseh, you are a great people with much power. You will not only have one lot, but the hills too will be yours. Although it is a forest, you will clear it, and the resulting opening land will be yours. You will drive out the Canaanite, even though they have iron chariots and are strong. Why is he telling them they can have extra land? It's not in this verse. It's not in anything that I told you, that I just read you. He's giving them the peripheral to say, okay, you want the extra land? There it is, up there on that hill. Go up there and clear it out. And what do? They start giving the excuses as to why they can't. Did it answer the question? Why have you given me only one lot of land and only one portion to inherit? That's the question. Did it get answered? No, it didn't. But he's acting on something that happened prior to. This is the culmination of a blessing that was given to Joseph. Okay? Joseph as his father. Who's Joseph's father? I gotta wake y'all up. Who's Joseph's father? Yaakov. Did Yaakov bless Joseph? Who remembers this whole entire action? He blesses Manasseh and Ephraim, but he also blesses Joseph. Bereshit, chapter 48, verse 21, is the reason why they get an extra portion of land. It says, Israel, Yaakov, then said to Joseph, you see that I am dying, and that Yahweh will be with you and bring you back to where? The land of your ancestors. Moreover, I am giving you a Shechem, a shoulder, a ridge, a hill, a share, the city of Shechem, more than your other brothers. I have captured it from the Emory with my sword and bow. He's capitalizing on a blessing that his father gave him. He says, and I'm here to go ahead and collect on it. Just like the daughters of Zelophehad came and collect on their inheritance that was given to them in the wilderness, that was promised to them from Moshe. This is the same thing that's happening right here with the tribe of Joseph. They're collecting on what was promised to them. All right? And I'm looking around the room at all these Hebrews, and I'm saddened. Because most of the Hebrews that we know, not the Hebrews here, because you know this, but most Hebrews don't even know that they have land. They don't know that they have a government. They don't know that they have a Most High that is willing to look out for them to deliver them back into the land. They're content with being just the way they are, in the way they are right now. Shame. It's a shame. And it's because your leaders that you put in front of you at your 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 11 o'clock service, and then if you decide you want to go back to your 7 o'clock broadcast service later on that night, since you didn't get enough, are not telling you this information. They're not teaching you the mitzvot. That's why you can allow charlatans to get up in front of you and tell you anything, because you yourself haven't studied jack squat. You will let anybody tell you anything because you won't study it yourself. You want somebody else to do it for you. You want it spoon-fed to you. And so therefore, when you're in the situation and you don't know any better, we did a podcast the other day talking about tangibility. Tangibility. And in that podcast, we said, listen, the Most High verses, matter of fact, Devarim chapter 28 tells you all the tangible things that are happening to the children of Israel. But you don't think that way because nobody is telling you, because of the reason why you're in the situation that you are in, children of Israel, is because you've fallen away from the mitzvot of the Most High. Therefore, you can break the Shabbat and not care. Therefore, you can go ahead and eat all kinds of things and not care. Because there is nothing that's going to happen to you, you believe. Because your teachers are not telling you you are going through something right now, but you're not associating it with text. You're just associating it with a bad situation. All right? Chapter number 18. All right. Chapter number 18 is pretty simple, even though it's kind of long. Chapter number 18 starts out by basically Yahushua getting on the case of the rest of the 7 tribes that have not been assigned their land. Okay, let's go through them real quick. We went through, let's count them together. We can all count to 12, right? What's that song? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What did that come off of? That was like Schoolhouse Rock. Thank you. I'm showing y'all my age. These young kids in the room like, huh? That ain't Teen Titans Go. So we got 12 tribes. Let's count them. We went through one of them already, which is Yehuda. That's 1. Okay. Yosef got his. That's 2. All right. Now, let's go through the rest of these because we got 7 of them that are here between, I'm going to do 18 and 19 together. Okay. So remember, we've got all 12 tribes. Make sure we got them all accounted for. Chapter number 18 all the way through verses 1 through 10 talk about basically Yahushua getting on the case of the 7 tribes that are left that haven't got their land. And they said, what are you waiting for? The land is out there. Take 3 individuals, leaders from your tribe, have them go out and reconnaissance the rest of the 7 territories or 7, divide up the land, and then what we will do when you come back, we will cast lots for those particular parcels of land. Okay? We'll cast lots for those. Everybody knows when we talk about Hebraically when casting lots is. Think of it as no more than a raffle. Okay? We got a bag, put our hand in the bag, possibly could have been the stones that represented each one of the tribes. We pulled out the stones. Okay, lot number 4 goes to the tribe of Naphtali. Okay? That's how we're casting these lots. All right. Now, he goes and commissions these 3 individuals from each individual tribe to go find the land. They come back. And then what we have starting in verse 11 is we have the tribe of Benjamin gets their borders defined. And that's all the way from verse 11 all the way through the end of the chapter. Chapter 19 picks up with Shimon, gets his allotment. Zebulun in 19, Yissachar in 19, verse 24 in chapter 19, Asher gets their land, Naphtali gets theirs in 32, verse 40, the tribe of Dan gets their particular inheritance. Is everybody accounted for? We've got 7 tribes between 18 and 19. We had 2 already that we've talked about. Which was who? Okay, let me give them to you. We've got 7 tribes already defined in 18 and 19. You already know about 2.5 of them already because they're on the west side of the Jordan. They were who? Gad, Reuven, and Manasseh. Okay? So, the other half tribe is Ephraim. So that would bring us to 10, right? Okay? Yehuda makes 11. What tribe am I missing? Levi. Right. We cannot forget about the Leviim. The Leviim have no inheritance. So what do the Leviim get? Cities. How many cities do they get? See, now I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm asking you questions that Hebrews in exile know about. You can't go tomorrow to a Sunday morning meeting and ask these same questions. Who was left out? Levi. What were they supposed to get? Cities. How many cities were they supposed to get? You can't ask the average parishioner that question. They're going to be like, why do I care or what do I need that for? Because it's our inheritance. That's why. Period. Anybody in here have a loved one that passed away? And I'm going to tell you, one of the things that actually happens that comes out in the nastiness is what mama and daddy left me. My inheritance. You will find more folk fighting over that at the end of the day. What did daddy leave me? What was in his pension? What was in his severance package that is allowed that I'm supposed to have? I'm telling you, you got a land over there somewhere across the Atlantic Ocean and you don't care. When I bring up these issues about, okay, well, Levi got left down here, this is a part of your ancestry and you don't care nothing about it. Because your teachers put your priorities in a place that they don't need to be. Okay? Now, I sound preachy, but I don't care. I'm going to be preachy. Why? Because I got a microphone and I can. So, what we have in 18 and 19 is the delineation of these particular tribes getting their inheritance. I asked you a question earlier. Now I need you to answer it for me. Pop quiz question. Why do we have Bad Midbar defining all these individuals? Why does Bad Midbar start out first 4 chapters and delineate X amount of people are in X amount of tribe? Thank you. Thank you. I used to read Bad Midbar and I'd be bored to tears starting out with them. Like, why do I have to know all these people's names? Why do I have to know all the thousands of people that was in the tribe of Dan? Why do I need to know all the thousands of people that were in the tribe of Naphtali? Because I'm telling you right now, let's go to it. There is a Torah mitzvot that says in Bad Midbar, chapter number 26, verses 52 through 57, it reads, and Yahweh said to Moses, Moshe, the land is to be allotted to them as an inheritance based on the number of names. That is why you have Bad Midbar. That is why you have the book of Numbers. Because we have to number the people that are there. It says, to a larger group, give a larger inheritance, and a smaller group, a smaller one. Each is to receive its inheritance according to the number of those listed. That is why Bad Midbar is written the way it is. It is the census that tells you, okay, you have X amount of people in here. That don't mean that when you get the biggest lot of land, that's not what that means. You get the land that's proportioned to your size, okay? And it is a Torah mitzvot. So the first 4 chapters of Bad Midbar are giving you all the backstory of how we set up this particular Torah mitzvot, okay? We're teaching mitzvot. Even though I said this is about the definition of the land, I'm trying my best to stay within the confines of teaching the mitzvot because that is what is important. Because if you don't know the mitzvot, somebody will come in here and tell you something different. You'll be like, nah, that's not what the text teaches us to do, okay? And the reason why I bring that up is this, because if we go to chapter 19, verse 9, it says in the book of Yahushua. No matter of fact, get that while we're there, and I'm going to finish reading this. It says, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, E52, you are to expel. Oh my goodness, I'm not in the right spot again, Appleton. Where are you going, sir? I did that one already too. Yes, to be allotted to a larger group then and give a larger inheritance, and to a smaller group, a smaller one. Each one is to receive its inheritance according to the number of those listed. Be sure that the land is distributed by lot. What each group inheritance will be according to the names of its ancestral tribes. Each inheritance is to be distributed by lot among the larger and the smaller groups. If we go back to chapter 19, verse 9, in the book of Yahushua, it says the inheritance of the descendants of Shimon was taken out of the allotment of the descendants of Yehuda. Why? Because the portion given to the descendants of Yehuda was too much for them. So the descendants of Shimon had the inheritance inside the descendants of Yehuda. That's where we see this Torah mitzvot come up. Okay? And how we can apply it. Say the reason why that was done was because what was set up before. It's based on size and it's based on the census. So that now when you're reading Bad Midbar and you're going to sleep, you're having that lack of hitting your head on the book, hitting your head on the table and all that stuff because you're falling asleep. You know, the reason why I'm reading is because when we get into the land, we know how to distribute it to the people that are there. Amen? Amen. 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 The latter part of 19 wraps up with this particular issue. And it is the inheritance that was given. This is starting in verse number 49 in chapter number 19. The inheritance given to Yahushua. He's given a city. Now, this particular city that Yahushua is given, since he is the tribal leader of Ephraim, Yahushua actually dies in this particular city. You'll find that out when you get into the book of Judges. He dies at the age of 110. And he's buried in Judges chapter 2, verse 9, in that particular city that he was given. And the latter part of the chapter ends this way, which I'm going to get into my next part here when we jump over into the New Testament. It says, these are the inheritance which Eleazar, the Kohanim, Yahushua, the son of Nun, and the leaders of the ancestral clans and tribes of the people of Israel distributed for the inheritance by lot in Shiloh before Yahweh at the door of the tent of meeting. Thus, they finished up dividing the land, which again, this is in complete harmony if you go back and reference this against those tribes that were named in chapter 19 against Bad Midbar 34, chapter verses 16 through 29. They're named again in that particular area. Now, those are all 5 chapters of Yahushua, 5 through 19. Now, we're going to jump across the street for a little bit. Because I asked you, I said, we're going to stick a pin in that in 15, and we're going to deal with something. Because as I dug into this issue a little bit more, I found out some more things that I just want to enlighten you about. Okay? And we're not, I started it, and then the Most High said, you had part of it. You went down the rabbit hole, but you didn't go down far enough. Okay? So, remember I had mentioned back in 15, I said, oh, is there such a mitzvot that deals with the dowry and all these different types of things? And I made mention of this issue of the elopers. Nobody who I'm talking about the elopers are? Mary, Joseph, the elopers. And what I had mentioned before, I said that there was an issue with these individuals. How many more Torah mitzvot did this man break? Now, it seems funny to me that if this Yeshua came into the world and was perfect and fulfilled the law, that you ain't supposed to do it now that he's fulfilled it. And I simply asked the question of people. I said, listen, do you have a driver's license? Okay. You fulfilled the requirement of getting a driver's license. So does that mean that when this young lady becomes of age, because you fulfilled it, she doesn't have to? Okay. For an individual to come in to fulfill the law and be perfect, it's funny to me how you came into this world was through a bunch of sin. I would think that if you came into this world, you'd not be breaking any of these Torah mitzvos. He even broke 3 of them just to get here. Like you trying to sneak somebody across the border. Come on, Jesus, we're going to come through Mary. We're going to do it this way because we can't do it through the Torah mitzvot. Let's just sneak you in this way. Like there's some border crossing or something. It don't happen like that, folks. First issue I got with this is what I brought up last time. I said what? I said, matter of fact, let's just go read it, just so you understand what's going on. Let's go back to old brother Matthew. Metayahu. I got them all up here because we're going to go through every single one of these, last one of these bad boys right here. I told you the rabbit hole gets a lot deeper than where I went last time. Matthew, let's read it. It says, here is how the birth of Yeshua, the Messiah, took place when his mother, Mary, is anybody confused about who his mother is? His mother, Mary, was engaged to Joseph before they were married. She was found to be pregnant by the Ruach HaKodesh. We got to stop right there. Try pulling that off in 2022. You will never see a virgin birth since then. Do you want me to believe that when you show up to my house and you say that, listen, Johan, stand up for a second. I'm going to ask you a question, brother. I want you to be very honest with me. Just be honest. Your girlfriend says to you, I'm pregnant. And it's by the Holy Spirit. You going to say what? Well, I hope Holy Spirit has a social security number and something, a birth certificate, because you're going to be taking him to child support is what you're going to be doing. Right? Right? That seems weird. Think about in this day and age, thank you. This day and age, if someone was to come to you and tell you that you got pregnant by the Holy Spirit, what you going to tell them? You going to believe them? No. No. So Joseph has got a problem right out of the gate. This is I got to tell you something. Joseph is an individual. I don't know anybody. I'm looking around the room when I said that, and I looked at all the men, and all of y'all had like a confused look on your face. Ain't no way in the world I'm gonna be dating somebody that's gonna tell me they got pregnant by somebody else and then blame it on the Holy Spirit. First of all, let me tell you about yourself. Let's continue. 19. Her husband to be, Joseph, was a man who did what was right. He was fully aware. I gotta believe, because that was interjected in there. He was fully aware of what was going on mitzvot wise. Know why? It's because of the statement that's made next. It says, so he made plans to break the engagement rather than to put her to public shame. But while he was thinking about this, the angel of Yahweh appeared to him, apparently, and in a dream, and said to him, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Miriam Miriam home with you as your wife, for what has been conceived in her is from the Ruach HaKodesh. In a dream. Okay. All right. Now, I got an issue with this, because let's go and read Devarim chapter number 22, verses 23 to 24. Let's get it. I don't necessarily have it on my paper, so I'm going to read it off of the back there. So while she's getting that, you see, we have this issue right now, okay? Because we're getting ready to break a Torah mitzvah in order for Yeshua to even get here. We got to break one. What does it say? It says, if a man marries a woman, has sexual relations with her, and then, no, not 23, 24. Yeah, Devarim should be 22, chapter number 22, verses 23 and 24. Should be further down than where I am. I'm going to go to that chapter, that verse there. We're going to stay there for a while. But, no, go up a little bit. Let's go up a little bit. Make a vow. No. Well, for the sake of time, what this particular mitzvot says is that if she is found to be pregnant, she's engaged to someone else, she's found to be pregnant by some other man while she's betrothed to somebody else, they are to take her out and they are to stone her to death. Okay? So that is why we have, and this is the first problem that we have with Joseph. That's it? Oh, there it is. If a girl who is a virgin is engaged to a man, and another man comes upon her in the town and has sexual relations with her, you are to bring them both out to the gate of the city and stone them to death. Okay? Now, in our text, we talked about how she was engaged to whom? Joseph. She got pregnant by the Ruach HaKodesh. So really, technically, by Torah mitzvot, the Holy Spirit should have got stoned along with Mary. Because he impregnated her and he knew that she was engaged. Why are we breaking Torah mitzvot, folks? But see, you don't know that. Why? Because your pastor is not telling you that. He's just simply saying, oh, look at how beautiful this was, the Immaculate Conception. And they didn't read this book that's out there called what? Something about the Messiah. One of our teachers in here wrote it. What's it called? In Defense of the Messiah, where we talk about that issue. Okay? Problem number 2 I got with this is where you almost were at. Whereas in Devarim 22, chapter 22, verses 13 through 20. Okay? Now, not only were they supposed to be stoned, but what else is supposed to happen? Now, what I'm going to define here in this particular verse, in chapter and verse, is the fact that Joseph had an issue because he's supposed to present a cloth that shows that Mary was a virgin. The cloth has to be presented. Who has the cloth? The parents have the cloth. He's supposed to have gone to the parents, give the parents the cloth that shows that her hymen was broken. He didn't do that. Let's read the text. It says, if a man marries a woman, has sexual relations with her, and then having come to dislike her, and this is dealing with the issue that he's married her, he dislikes her, and I want the point that I'm bringing out of this is that she has to present that rag, that cloth. Listen for it. It's in here. And brings false charges against her and defames her character by saying, I married this woman, but when I had intercourse with her, I did not find evidence that she was a virgin. Then the girl's father and mother are to take the evidence of the girl's virginity to the leaders of the town at the gate. You are supposed to have evidence. The girl's father will say to the leaders, I let my daughter marry this man. Remember, I talked about that earlier. She gets to marry the guy because he allowed it. I let my daughter marry this man, but he hates her. So he has brought false charges that he didn't find evidence of her virginity. Yet here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they will lay the cloth before the town leaders. The leaders of that town will take the man, punish him, and fine him 2.5 pounds of silver shekels, which they will give to the girl's father because he has publicly defamed a virgin of Israel. She will remain his wife, and he is forbidden from divorcing her as long as he lives. This is this issue of bringing false allegations against somebody else about her virginity. You are not allowed to divorce her, and you got to pay. Verse 20 goes on, it says, but if the charge is substantiated that evidence for the girl's virginity could not be found, then they are to lead the girl to the door of her father's house. The men of the town will stone her to death because she has committed in Israel a disgraceful act of being a prostitute while still in her father's house. In this way, you will put an end to such wickedness among you. Okay? So, I asked you the question, could Joseph have presented this cloth? Where is the cloth? There is none. Okay? There is no cloth. All right? Problem number 3 with this is that what? If we go back to Shemot 22, 16 and 17, Joseph, being betrothed to this individual, had to pay what? He had to pay the dowry price. Did he pay that? There's no evidence that he paid that either. Know why? Because we have individuals that are on the run. They're eloping. Why are all these things happening for a person that's supposed to be delivering the children of Israel into the land? Why do we have all this drama. But then when he gets here, he's going to fulfill everything. Well, I can tell you 3 of them that he didn't fulfill. And those are the 3 right there. Okay? Now, I asked you a question earlier that this is kind of a group discussion. It is not something that there is a right or wrong answer. Please join in with me. Explain to me or answer the question. I give you enough time. Explain to me the question, why you believe Jesus is God. When you were in the Christian church, somebody explained to me. Go ahead. Because people told you. Okay, that's good. Anybody else? Because they said so. They took it to Timothy. What did Timothy say? That he gave his only begotten son? Okay. 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 So the answers that we got around the room sounds like a consensus here is that we were told, all right, and that you don't dispute that when somebody tells you that he's God. Okay, all right. Let's put this into 2022 terms. If Jesus showed up today, it'd be very difficult to prove that. Okay? Because the first thing you'd be doing is probably say, like, okay, let's get a paternity test. Let's figure out who the real daddy is. This would be something right out of Jerry Springer. They'd have what? They'd have Mary sitting right here. Then they have Joseph sitting right here. And then you have what? Jerry Springer would come up and say, in my hand is an envelope that has the results of the paternity test. I'm going to open it up. Joseph, you are not the father of this individual. He'd probably jump up and run around, and do all this other kind of stuff, pick a bale of cotton, right? Let's put it in 2022 terms. If I was to tell you that man right there sitting behind the camera was Jesus the Christ or the second coming, you're going to tell me just because I told you so? You going to believe it? Come on, folks. Stay with me. I just told you I have a microphone just like they do across the street. 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock service. I just told you that that man is the second coming of Christ. You're supposed to believe me. What evidence do you have to prove it? So why are you believing it? You're just blindly believing it. Wow, okay. Now, I heard, most of you may know, I listened to some YouTube channels, and they tried to answer this question. And you know the answers that they gave? They said this. They said, what proves God is God, or Jesus is God, is because, one reason might be because my parents told me so. Because I know that he is. Okay? Because of faith. Okay? Because I had an amazing experience. Okay? But this particular pastor said the reason why, those are all irrelevant answers. This is coming out of the Christian church. It said all those reasons because you were told don't mean a hill of beans. You know why Jesus is the Messiah? It's because the prophets say so. And I said to myself, you got to be kidding me. Now we get into this issue of misquoting the prophets and taking things out of context to prove this riding in on a donkey and this other stuff. But I said to myself, for me, how would I answer that question? And I said, by the things that he does. Come on, let's put it into layman's terms. If I told you that this was the Christ, what would you say? Get your butt up and walk on water. Get your butt up and heal somebody. I know that who you are based on what you do. Okay? The one thing that I found that was very interesting, hopefully this is enlightening for a few of you, maybe not all of you, is that all of the stuff that Jesus did, do you realize has been stolen from our Hebrew text? Almost all of the miracles that man performed have been stolen. They've been done before. I'm thinking of one prophet that dang near did all of them. Does anybody know what prophet I'm talking about? It does start with an E. The prophet Elisha did all these things. You want to sit there and have somebody tell you that because this man walked on water and that he healed the sick and that he healed the blind, because it's news to you because you haven't read text. Now you want to say, oh, okay, yeah, he must be God. I'm going to tell you something. Elisha did all of these things and they never not once called him God. Not one time. Okay? And Elisha didn't come into this world by way of false pretenses of breaking some mitzvahs. So I'm just going to break them down to you because they're all my references are right here. Okay? Let's go to one. All right? In 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 18. No. I should have said 2 up there. Did I write 12? Disregard that 1. It's chapter 2. Chapter 2. I'm going to go there first. 1 through 18. This is where you're going to find this issue of where, in like and kind, both Elisha and this so-called Yeshua start their ministries in the same spot. They started at the River Jordan. Okay? What happens at the River Jordan? Elijah, who is whom to Elisha? He would be his mentor, his teacher, says, it's time for me to die. They go down to the Jordan. He puts his cloak right on the Jordan. The Jordan splits in half. They walk through on dry land. And then he says to him, he says, my servant, he said, I'm getting ready to leave and get called up into the Hashemayim. Now, there's 2 people that I know of in Scripture already. Now, y'all want to sit here and say this, oh, well, Jesus got called up into the sky. There's 2 other individuals that got called up in the sky first. One of them, his name is whom? Enoch. The other one is Elijah. There's 2 of them over there that got called up prior to this. Okay? He says, I'm getting ready to get called up. I'm getting ready to die. He says, what do you want, my servant Elisha? He says, I want a double portion of what you got. He says, okay, that's fine. If you see me getting taken up, and what happens is that the chariots of fire, the horsemen and the chariot of fire comes in, they split them in half. He sees Elijah go up into the cloud, and that's when his cloak drops down. He picks up the cloak, and as he's leaving, he splits the water. He starts his ministry at the River Jordan. Some might say that Yeshua started his ministry at the River Jordan because what was happening at that particular time? John the Baptist was what? Immersing people. And that's when he started his ministry when he was 30 years old. I got another issue with you being 30 years old. I'm going to start rattling these off quick now. I got another issue when you're 30 years old and you're starting your ministry. The Most High don't have to wait till he's 30 years old to start something. You know who the youngest king in Israel's history was? He started at the age of 7. Okay? So the Most High don't have to wait 30 years in order to start doing stuff. Okay? Start leading people. That's in 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 18. Let's go to another example. They said, okay, Yeshua raised a widow from the dead. Or it said Yeshua raised the son of a widow from the dead. Okay? That's in text. Or their text. Did Elijah raise somebody from the dead? Yes, he did. There was a woman that was well-to-do. She had a husband. Elisha would come through this particular town, and she built an actual room. She built like a separate room on her house for this individual, for Elisha. As he was coming back and forth, he says, I want to repay you for all of the good things that you've done for me. She said, what can I do? She said, I'm content with where I am. So he finds out that this woman doesn't have a son. So what she says, he says, by this time next year, you're going to have a son. Come to find out, as the son grew, the son actually died. And so the servant goes to Elisha. I'm paraphrasing. The servant goes to Elisha, and Elisha comes back, and he hurries back and sees what's going on. He goes into the room Actually, he places the son in Elisha's private room. He goes in there, he lays on top of the young lad, gets up, goes and walks around, comes back and does it again. Second time he comes in again, the boy is raised from the dead because he had died. So raising people from the dead, folk, ain't nothing new. Just because you found out about it, that Jesus did it, didn't mean that it's new. You know, the thing that I want to actually point out is when I was coming up in the 90s, and everybody knows about this individual named Sean Puffy Combs. Who doesn't know about Sean Puffy Combs? Sean Puffy Combs is a producer out of New York. And one of the things that used to get on Sean Puffy Combs' case is he used to steal, so to speak, samples from music, sample jazz, sample all kinds of things, and then remake it and put it into a different song. And then we would listen to it and we say, oh, that's, woo, that song is dope. And then somebody would come back and say, that ain't nothing but just Gladys Knight. What you listening to has been done before. But when I heard it, I thought it was new. And then you go back and you listen to the original song, you're just like, oh man, really? That is what's happening here. Let's go to another one. You also heard that what? Jesus fed thousands of people, loaves of bread and fishes. Do you think that that's something new? No, it is not. All right? Instead of loaves and fishes, or that particular food, or whatever you want to call it, fried fish, he had a whole fish fry for a whole bunch of people. There is an issue in 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 42 through 44, where Elisha feeds 100 men with just a few loaves of bread. And it's a short little paragraph, but what happens is someone is bringing Elisha some bread. He says, what am I to do with this bread? He says, go feed those men. And the guy was like, how in the world am I going to feed 100 men with a couple loaves of bread? He said, you're going to feed them and you're going to have something left over. My point, again, it's not new. Just because your Yeshua did it don't mean that it's new. Let's do another one. You heard that Jesus turned water into wine. Do you think that that's new? No, it is not. The multiplication of something, and I'm going to tell you something about these prophets, because I found myself, I want to take a sidebar real quick. I found myself getting so entrenched into these prophets that I said, Most High, that's what I want. I want you to give me that. I want you to give me the power to do that. And I said, is that the correct thing to ask? And I thought to myself, I said, no, that's probably not the right thing to ask of the Most High. I want the extra. But I will say this, that the Most High pours his spirit into individuals whom he can use for what is needed at that particular time. Moshe, you don't see doing this. But Moshe had a plethora of an outpouring in him from the Most High to achieve what he needed to achieve at that particular time. Moshe is one of our greatest prophets. Yahushua had the same thing. He had a resolve none other to execute these mitzvot. At each dispensation of time, the prophets and the individuals that the Most High has set before the people of Israel have had a certain set of traits that have been systemic and will be able to be used for that particular time. Me asking the Most High to say, I want that kind of power, is to say, listen, no, because maybe what I'm giving to you right now is the ability to do what you're doing. To speak to individuals, to speak through that podcast, to speak to people on the Shabbat, to giving you all these things that you need to have. Maybe you going ahead and putting your hands on the sick and healing the blind is not something that is needed during this dispensation of time. What's needed during this dispensation of time is people getting educated on the mitzvot. So therefore, I got you exactly where I want to have you. So don't look to Elisha and the rest of these folk looking for their power that they got. They got what they were supposed to receive when they were supposed to have it to aid the children of Israel in their dilemma at that dispensation of time. Not 2021 or 2022 or 2023. I'm going to name them all since I don't know what year I'm in. Let's do another one. Liquid. Yeshua turned huge quantities of water into wine. Well, I hate to tell you this, folks, but that's been done too. If you go to 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7, you see that And the reason why I brought that up is because even when Elisha is using his power, he uses it only in the confines of Torah. He's not one of these individuals that says, if you give me this power, I'm just going to go out here and just use it willy-nilly. I'm using it for the purposes of kind of this gray area that comes up in Torah so I can function. This is one of these issues. One of the people from the guild prophets came to Elisha and said this. He says, hey, listen, my husband has died. He was one of the prophets in the guild. And now, because we don't have anything left, they're going to come take my children and they're going to make them servants. So what does Elisha do? He sees this problem and says, this woman doesn't have enough money to pay. So how do I help her out? He says, what? Go borrow a whole bunch of jugs from all your neighbors. Because he asked her the question. He says, what do you have in the house? He said, I don't have anything left in my house except oil. He says, go get the jugs. She gets the jugs. They bring them back, and she just starts pouring and pouring and pouring. All these jugs get filled up. And then Elisha goes back and says, now your children won't have to be sold into servitude because now you can go sell all of this oil. Okay? Not because we're going to sit around, eat and drink and get merry off of drunkenness and wine. We're not doing that. See, you can get told that narrative and say, well, what was the purpose of him making wine? What was the purpose? What in the confines of Torah, somebody coming to you saying we ran out of milk, gives you, oh, let's just go make some more. We ran out of wine, let's go make some more. So y'all can be happy? Elisha did this because of the fact that a woman came to him and said, I have an issue. My sons and daughters are going to get sold into servitude. I need to help in a certain kind of way. That's why he implements that. It's to help. Okay? Let's do another one. You've heard that Yeshua healed many lepers. The Sara'at. There is a Syrian commander by the name of Naaman. He healed him of his leprosy. He came to him. He says, hey, listen, I understand that you are who you are. I have this issue of leprosy. I'm here to pay you. He says, you don't need to pay me. You need to go ahead and dip yourself in the Jordan 7 times. He scoffs off and he says, this is Elisha. What in the world? All I got to do is bathe. You couldn't have said something else? And then Elisha's servant comes out and he says, listen, the prophet told you to go dip yourself in the water 7 times. Calm yourself. It's easy to dip yourself in the water. He could have told you to do something very difficult, but he didn't. He said, just go bathe 7 times. Try that first and see if that doesn't work. He goes and he bathes 7 times. He comes back, his Sara'at's gone. He thanks Elisha, and he's on his way down the road. His servant decides to be a little subversive, and he says, well, you didn't brought all this money. He's thinking to himself. He doesn't talk with Elisha about this. He says, you brought all this. This guy brought all this money, and he was willing to pay. It would be a shame if nobody capitalized on that. So what Elisha's servant does is he runs after the guy, the commander, as he's leaving with all his money. And he says, hey, hold up. There were some individuals that came in. They need something from us. Can we just have some of that money that you were going to give Elisha? He says, by all means, please take it. Matter of fact, he's heading back. And this is so funny. This is like when you're having kids and they try to hide stuff from you and you find out anyway. So he's going back and he gets to the door. He tells, because what he does is the commander sends 2 servants with Elijah's servant back. Before they get back to where Elisha is, the servant of Elijah sends the 2 servants of the commander away. Says, you don't need to go any further than this. I can take it from here. So he takes the rest of the money and Elisha stops him and he says, hey, listen, when that man got off of his chariot to come down and meet you, did you not think of me? See, Elisha knew what he did before he came back. He said, because you want to be greedy, because you want to capitalize on taking this money, this man Sara'at that I cured, will be now on you and your descendants for the rest of your days. He sends him away. He sends him away. Let's do a couple more. Yeshua walked on water. Do you think that that's new? No. And that, in the sense that, think about this, the things that are made to sink float. That's what Yeshua was doing. He was making something that should have sank float, right? On top of the water. Elisha did the same thing. But again, he's using his power as a prophet. I hope you're getting something out of this, because I really want to reaffirm all these different things to say you have deitized somebody that doesn't need to be deitized. Okay? You're doing something that doesn't need to be deitized. Okay? Elisha, the prophet guild, comes to him and says, hey, listen, we want you, or we want to, the land that we're in is too small to house you because you've gotten so big from who you are, and then there's us. So we want to leave where you are and go down to the yard. We're going to go chop down some wood, and then we're going to build homes and a place for ourselves down by the yard. And is that okay with you? He says, absolutely. You can go ahead and do that. They go. He said, well, why don't you come with us? He said, fine. Now, Elisha, I will come with you down to the yard. They get down to the yard, and they start chopping down the trees. One of the servants is chopping down one of the trees, and the axe handle or the axe head falls into the Yarden River. Anybody knows what the rest of that story happens? What happens? Yeah, that's where we're getting ready to go. So Elisha says, okay, because it's what the man blurts out that says to me, Elisha is always acting within the confines of a Torah mitzvah when he's helping people with the divinic power that he's been given. He says, okay, the servant says, oh man, I dropped the axe handle in the yard. And it was borrowed. All you Torah mitzvos folks should come right off of your tongue. When something is borrowed, you have to what? And you lose it and you jack it up. You have to replace it. And he said, oh, this is something that I borrowed. As if to say, I borrowed it because I don't have something to replace it with. So Elisha does what? He chops down a branch, he throws it into the water, and the axe head floats all the way to the top. Nothing else comes to the top but that axe handle. Okay? Things that are made to sink float. Jesus walked on water. Whoever he made walk on water, Matthew, Peter, Paul, John, I don't care who they are. But then Elisha makes things float as well. All right, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do one more. Actually, I'm going to do two more. Now, did Jesus give sight to the blind? Yes, he did. Elisha gave sight to the blind too. There was a particular situation where, this is a long one, but I'm not going to get into it. Just know that I'm going to give you the reference for it. 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 14 through 23. This is this whole entire issue where they are going to attack Elisha, and what he does is he blinds them, and he leads them to another area. He leads them to another portion of the land, and then he unblinds them at that particular point. So he's able to inflict blindness and take it away. And that's what's confines in those particular chapters. I'm going to do one more. This is the last one. This is probably the biggest, maybe the biggest, one of the biggest ones. Back from the dead. Jesus rose back from the dead. Oh boy. So what did Elisha do as far as this bringing back to life dead things? We already talked about one of them already where he brought the child back. So upon Elisha's death, he's buried in a tomb. And Elisha is buried in this tomb. And once the text says that once a year, invaders came in and they would pillage these tombs. But as these a group of individuals close to Elisha's tomb was trying to bury someone else. They saw these raiders coming from afar off, and they said, we know what those raiders are about. Let's get rid of this body really, really quick. So they took the body and they threw the body in Elisha's tomb. Upon touching the bones of Elisha, the man that they were trying to hide came back to life. So the power, that divinic power was still in Elisha's bones, to where he was able to heal people when he wasn't even here. Okay? I want to and that kind of wraps up where I was kind of going to go with all this today, is to draw your attention to something that I had brought up before, which was giving you information so you can make an informed decision about who you're putting your faith and your trust in. You have to be able to discern the information that's being given to you and weigh it against what is true that the Most High has established. And if you're uneducated on these misfolks and the things that your patriarchs have done, you will think that just because somebody showed up out the blue, that is something new to you. And that's where a lot of our people are going astray. Because I can tell you right now, if you walked into some beauty parlor and somebody was in there spouting off at the mouth about how Jesus did this and Jesus did that, you wouldn't be like, you know what? Do you realize that your Jesus, all that stuff he did is old? I mean, it's not new. And take them right to Elisha and say, this is where you stole all this from. Stole it. So I ask you again, what makes you believe that Jesus is God? You just can't be like, because I told you so. And you can't be weak and cowardly. I am sorry if you don't like those terms, but I'm going to use them. You cannot be a coward when it comes to when people are teaching you things and you just back off. You have to do your study. We perish for the lack. And that is why part of the reason we're in the state that we're in now, because when you got snatched off that continent and you were brought here and your language was changed and your culture was changed, we disconnected you completely from your Elohim. Wherever you got dispersed, I don't care if it's in the United States or if it's over in Arabia, it happened. And you got disconnected. And you live in a day and age where you don't even want to know. Because you know why? It's going to mess with you. It's going to make you uncomfortable with where you are. If a lot of the things that you were being told, you actually challenged them through what you call the scientific method, which is to challenge it and ask the simple questions, you wouldn't believe half the stuff that's over here. But you do it anyway. Why? Because mama told me. Daddy told me. Ask the question. Ask the question. The Most High wants leaders. That's why I led with that when I started. The Most High wants leaders. He doesn't want followers. You're supposed to lead. And if you're just following after what somebody else is telling you in some pulpit and not doing your own research, then you just can't be used. And I'm going to say it. The Most High is calling a specific group of people out. And not everybody that's melanated and not everybody who's non-melanated is going to get called out of that. Just because you say who you say you are. You got to have a mind to understand where the Most High is. And if you're not putting yourself in a position to be taught, to understand the governance and how the Most High wants his people to matriculate back into the land, then there is no use for you. You will be one of those people in the last days, the part of that 2/3 that won't make it. We are trying to get people to a point where the Most High is going to be able to impart in you the things that are going to be able to make us successful. That's all we're trying to do. Okay? And that goes
for everybody that's here. That's for everybody that's in the stream. That's for all you purple and gold folks that still got your foot in Yeshua. Y'all are right there. I watch your videos. Y'all are right there. Y'all just need to drop this idol worship and get back to the Most High. I love your strength. I love your pride. I love your ability to understand who we are. But you still got something going on with this idol worship that is not preventing you to step into what you need to step into, which is gathering all of Israel back and heading back to where we need to be. Now, I'm sorry if I got preachy at the end, and I'm throwing papers around and all kinds of stuff, but you need to understand something, okay? That you need to stop deifying and just believing just what somebody says because they got 14 carats on their pinky ring and they got gold-plated shoes and they got a nice tie and they come in with 100 mil cotton shirts in front of you. And I can get down there too. I can get in my preacher's voice too. I can do all that stuff. I can scream and do all that. But that means nothing because it's just clamoring. It's the banging of cymbals. It's the blowing of that trumpet. That means nothing. It's just noise. Because we are not getting back to the way that the Most High has designed us to act. And you need to understand that. We'll never move forward as a people if we continue to keep on like we've been keeping on. I pray that the Most High sends us a leader. That's what I pray for. The return of Israel to the land, to the mitzvot. Give us a leader that we can stand behind, that we can get behind and matriculate back into the land and do our mitzvot the way that you would have us to do it. Being a part of this Hebrew way is beautiful. It's liberating. It gives us everything that we need to be successful. And all we want to do is walk right before the Most High. I am not going to get before you and tell you that we are correct. If anybody gives you the impression that anybody, and I mean anybody, in FTF is correct 100%, that is not true. We are still trying to make it the best way we can. We are still trying to make it the best way we can. When Most High is giving us, continuing to give us all kinds of information so we can walk in 100% alliance and harmony with Him. I come before all of you humbly, saying that the Most High has a lot to do with me as a person and with all of us. But if we keep our minds focused on text and scripture and making sure that everything that we do is in accordance with it, we're in this period of grace. That means that we can go ahead and we not intentionally messing up, but things when we do mess up, that's why we're in this period of grace, so we can get it right. Okay? So with that, I say to all of you, Shabbat, Shalom. I want everybody to get something out of this, wherever you are, whatever position you're at. The Most High is willing to plant that, water that seed. He's willing to water that seed. All right? So with that, I want to admonish you by blessing you. Yivarekaka, Yahweh v'yishmareka. Ya'er Yahweh panav eleka v'huneka, Yisa Yahweh panav eleka v'yasam leka shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh lift up His face towards you, face to shine on you and show you His favor. Excuse me. May Yahweh lift His face towards you and give you shalom. And with that, everybody that has probably listened to the podcast, I'm going to end it this way. Hebrews in exile, you know what we do. Let's go. Thank you.